Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Planning Board meeting for October 19th, 2021. My name is Carrie Marnick. I'm Chair of the Planning Board. Before we get started here, I'm going to read a couple of announcements. This open meeting of the Planning Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, the town of Northborough has been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. All members of the planning board are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order allows the planning board to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberation of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of this meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link listed on the agenda. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Millie Milton?
Here.
Michelle Gillespie?
Here.
Anthony Zaitin?
Here.
And Amy Pretsky?
Here.
Okay, and then staff, when I call your name, please reply in the affirmative. Looks like Kathy Jubert.
Here.
Okay, great. For presenters and or applicants listed on the agenda, the chair will invite each speaker or applicant on the agenda by name to make a presentation and speak to their application. Participants will provide their full name and hold until their name is called. Each speaker will be asked to mute their phone or computer when not speaking and to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate meeting minutes. Those responding will be asked to wait until the floor is yielded to them by the chair. Speakers who wish to respond to the comments of others do so through the chair, taking care to identify themselves. Each vote taken by the board or committee will be conducted by a roll call vote. After members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment as follows. By phone, dial *9 to raise your hand and wait to be recognized by the chair. Please note the party phone number will be visible to those viewing the meeting. By Zoom, click raise hand on the bottom of your screen and wait to be recognized by the chair. The chair will ask members of the public who wish to speak to identify their names and addresses only. Once the chair has a list of all public commentators, the chair will call each one by name and afford approximately 3 minutes for any comments. With that, why don't we get started with tonight's agenda? First on our agenda, we have Ashley Davies presenting OSC CPC application. So let's see, we're gonna bring Ashley in. Do we have her here? Oh, hi, Ashley.
Hi, how is everyone?
Good, thanks.
Hi, Ashley.
All
Do you
right,
need to share a screen or anything, or do you have the ability to share a screen if you need to?
I don't think I'm going to need to today. I had hoped to have some visuals, but not quite there yet with the map.
Okay, no problem. All right, so why don't you present what you had, and then we'll open up a discussion.
Sure. So I'm here tonight. So I'm Ashley Davies from the Open Space Committee. I'm here tonight to ask for a letter of support for a CPC application that the Open Space Committee is hoping to submit to fund a feasibility study for a multi-use trail. The idea for this trail started with the town of Westboro. They've been working for a number of years on putting together a trail in their town and just completed a feasibility study there that they're kind of working out the kinks of, and they're just beginning to negotiate easements. And the folks over there had looked at the Northborough trails as well, as they've been working on the Burroughs Trail project and kind of had this idea and came to us with some information, a lot of information actually already kind of laid out. And when we saw this information, we realized that it fits really nicely with a few of the master planning goals from the recent master plan, including looking for opportunities for sidewalks and pedestrian orientation projects, which this would be. So, and it also meets some of the goals of the open space and recreation plans. So the idea for this project is, at this stage, just obtaining a feasibility study, but the overall goal for the multi-use trail would be to create a 6-mile trail that comes from Westboro all the way up to Berlin, connects with the trail that the town of Westboro will be working on, as well as the trail that the town of Berlin would be working on. And Berlin's is about a 1-mile section that would connect this up to the Mass Central Rail Trail, which is the subject of some funding at the state level. So The 6 Mile area that is kind of the focus of this does provide a number of connections from Lake Chauncey, Algonquin, the Senior Center, Memorial Field, and some of the downtown businesses. So it would be sort of like a rail trail and would allow folks in Northborough to really to access a number of areas by foot, by bike, and other modes of transportation that are not vehicles. So I feel like this, with sidewalks being a really tricky thing for the town to take on, maybe this could be a way to bring these, sort of a pedestrian project to town without having to go about creating sidewalks throughout town. There is one other piece. And so when we were discussing this project in the open space committee, there was another piece, which is about a 1 mile section that goes from Westboro over to Shrewsbury, which kind of just allows people from Northborough Crossing to connect up with, potentially at some future point, over Route 9 to access the commuter rail. And so when we were discussing getting a feasibility study on this 6 mile section, everyone said, well, why not, also get a feasibility study on this 1 mile section as well, and see if, that's at all doable. And if we're going to do it, do all of it. So at this stage, we're just kind of determining whether this is something that the town could or would like to take on. And this feasibility study would look at the mapping that's already been done by the folks in Westboro and really hone in on it, make sure it's accurate, determine all of the landowners that we need to work with in order to make this possible, what wetlands areas there might be, what rare habitat areas there might be, grading issues, things like that, just to see what's doable, road crossings, what would have to happen there. Is this even possible? It wouldn't at this point get into overall costs, although I think, so I got an estimate from Waterman Design Associates on cost, and they estimated $85,000 for the total cost for this study. And at this point, their estimate doesn't include determining the cost. So I think that might be a further stage in terms of design of the trail and then getting the cost. But we could always put out a request for proposals that included, the firm, whatever firm's providing us with costs. Not sure exactly. Maybe Kathy knows more about that than I do, whether you can ask for that level at this stage in the game with the feasibility study. But right now we're asking for, I think, just to be safe, $100,000 for a feasibility study. If Waterman estimates $85,000, some other companies may estimate more. Waterman is a good choice because they did the Westboro feasibility study and are familiar with this trail. They've also been working with the Trails Committee on the Aqueduct Bridge and some other things in town. So they may be, but obviously we'd put out a proposal to see who was out there. But I think it is important to note that the Trails Committee is putting forth 2 CPC applications for trail work, one being the Aqueduct Bridge work. And the Aqueduct Bridge would be a portion of this 6 mile multi-use trail. Obviously, Aqueduct Bridge would happen sooner, and this may be something that could complement that and add to it later down the road once we kind of get to that stage. So I think that's really it for now. As I did submit to you a draft application, and I do want to make some edits to that, create a better map. And in the application, I did say we could apply for a Mass Trails grant in February, but I think Trails Committee does have 2 applications they'd like to submit to Mass Trails. So this would probably be just solely CPC funds. So we would allow Trails Committee to go for those and not kind of interrupt their process. I think the one last thing to mention, and I'm blanking, just that right now there is a lot of funding for pedestrian orientation projects like this. And so that's why we feel like it would be a good time to kind of get this ball rolling, as well as the fact that it is, does meet a master planning goal, and we'd like to really try to move those forward. So that's all I have for now.
Okay, great. Any comments or questions from, comments or questions from board members?
Ashley, I don't know if it's in the body of it, but does it talk about how long the feasibility study would take once it started?
Yes, I did get that information from Waterman today, and I think it was around 9 months. So let me just no, it's in here somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah, 5 to 7 months to complete, barring any snow cover getting in the way of their work.
To me, it sounds like a great project. Like, it does fit a lot of the criteria in the master plan. I think it's really exciting. I think a lot of towns benefit from a rail trail. And I think the residents would be really excited.
Just a quick question for me. You mentioned that the trails had two different proposals out. One was the Aqueduct Bridge, and what was the second one they have out?
They do have a loop trail that they're working on at the senior center, which this could connect to, but the loop trail is sort of its own ADA accessible loop.
So what you're proposing is not necessarily taking away from any of those. It's just a supplement that could work in conjunction with our.
Yeah, so their projects are in the near term, and they would probably happen in the next few years, I would assume. And I think the bridge will take some time, which is why I'm saying a few years, even though they're, kind of getting started already. This project would be for a feasibility study. Obviously, we would be getting started in the summer. We'd probably put out for bids after town meeting. And then once we had the feasibility study, within 6 months or so, we could start looking at negotiating easements and seeing whether we could really make this happen. And if it seemed like a real possibility, I think from there, a project like this probably estimated to take about 5 to 10 years. So it is something that takes a long time. It does cost a lot of money. Something like this can cost $1 million a mile if you're doing a paved, like a rail trail. A lot of this project is on the aqueduct. So there is discussion that has to be had with MWRA, whether, something short of paving could work, and that may make it a less expensive project. I did talk to Westboro today, and they have a short section, and they said their estimate was something like $24,000 for their section, which is very low. And I don't think it took into consideration some of the wetlands issues and permitting and things like that. So they're still working out their numbers there, but with a paved like rail trail, $1 million a mile, but something like this, I think would be different. We're looking for it to be able to be used by a number of, we'd like it to be ADA accessible and, used by bikers and hikers, but hoping for something less than paved and what a full rail trail might cost.
And have you presented at other boards or committees or have feedback that you've heard, either pros or cons or anything?
Yeah, thus far, I presented at Trails Committee last night, and they were very enthusiastic. Obviously, they want to, see the feasibility study and see if this is possible. It sounds like, why not? No brainer. Let's see if we can make this happen, because if we could, it'd be a great project. So they're going to provide a letter of support. We did speak with DPW director, and he kind of was like, yeah, let's see what happens, not positive, not negative. And Mia sort of the same, nothing against. So, let's explore our options.
Okay. Any other board questions, or Kathy, any questions from you?
No, I don't have any questions. I just, Ashley and I both were at the Trails Committee last night, and I just want to give you a little bit of, maybe just a little bit more information on the Trails Committee's applications. It's not, as Ashley said, the Trails Committee is going to, put it, provide a letter of support for the application. And it's not, I think one of the reasons why they're not, a couple of reasons why they're not doing this or promoting this just yet is because they've been working on these other two applications, these other two projects for a few years now. And the accessible trail, it's a loop trail around the senior center or on the senior center property. And we had, as a town, we applied for two other grants or two grant programs, and we were not awarded either one of those grants. And so now we're before the Trails Committee is before the CPC, and that is for the design work for that trail. And then their second application, which has long been a dream of so many people for so many years in this community, which is actually using the aqueduct. And as Ashley had mentioned, part of or most of the bigger project that she's looking at, would utilize the aqueduct bridge. And so the Trails Committee is submitting a grant, a CPC application to do the design work on that also. A feasibility study has already been done on the bridge. A structural analysis has already been done on the bridge. There's a question about, right now it's owned by the Massachusetts Water Resource Authority. So it's a question of who would end up owning the bridge. We would like to see that it stays with the MWRA. We already have our 8M permit. You're all familiar with the 8M permit. So we already, as a community, we already have our 8M permit to cross the aqueduct. The state has given us permission to do that. So those are the first two, or the two priorities of the Trails Committee as far as getting funding. And as Ashley said, this project is looked at, the aqueduct, crossing the aqueduct is going to be, that's not going to be done in just one application either. That's going to run into a lot of construction costs and burying of underground, putting wires underground and so forth. So these are not, the senior center loop is cheap compared to the two projects that Ashley and I are working on, and or that the Trails Committee and the Open Space Committee are working on. So we don't, there's always a concern. We don't want these applications to compete with each other, but they're really all at different stages. And then, if they all are funded by the CPC, then, we really will want to internally coordinate, how we go after additional grant funding so that we're not putting two town projects against each other for outside grant funding.
Okay. Any other board questions or comments?
Over here. So is there are you leveraging any of the existing trails in town, or is this all new trails?
It does leverage existing trails as well as the aqueduct for a large portion. So it's mostly aqueduct and then some other connections. And then it connects up with, Edmund Hill Woods and a few other properties. It's not going to take away, ruin any of our existing trails. I guess it's kind of what I want to say. Like we wouldn't, those are kind of off into the woods. They have their own situation. This is kind of really going to be a lot on the aqueduct, which I think is why the discussions with the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority is, those discussions are going to be really crucial to determine if this is really possible.
Would there be any street sections where there's going along a road?
There are a few small sections along roads. There is a potential railroad crossing that we could avoid. There are a couple of road crossings.
And in terms, you talked about Edmonds Hill, there's some technical portions of that. Would you be just leaving them as they are? You wouldn't be smoothing them out or widening them or anything like that?
That's the intent at this point. Yeah, not getting into the conservation areas. So I think that's what Westboro at this point is trying to figure out, because theirs, I think, goes through some conservation areas and some sensitive areas, and they're trying to figure out how to get around those. So we would want to make sure at the outset we're avoiding any sensitive habitat and conservation areas, so we can kind of make this a different type of trail that, doesn't impact those areas, but provides this pedestrian access.
Cool. All right.
And
Thanks.
I do need to do more work on the mapping because, as I noted, the town of Westboro folks had done mapping, but, we have to do our own. And obviously that's, this feasibility study would really look into that and look at options and alternatives as well. So.
Great.
Okay. Michelle, anything from you?
Yeah, I had already voiced my concerns at the open space meeting. While I think it's a good project, I don't think it's a good project for this year for town meeting. So I would not be voting in favor of it. I think we've got plenty of two major projects for the senior center and the aqueduct, which is going to be quite expensive on the aqueduct. So I'd much rather see resources go to that. I know that the aqueduct is a long-term project as well as this one. But I think at this point in time, I really feel like following what the Trails Committee is doing, which is putting their efforts into the senior center and the aqueduct, is probably more important than looking at this. But certainly the master plan could probably put it on their list and look at it next year or the following year. But at this point, I think the energy from the town should go to the aqueduct. So I'm not in favor of it. For this year, I'm not in favor of it.
Okay.
I just wanted to add, I watched the conservation meeting last night. So the CPC money going towards the loop, I think Mia said was going to be 28,500 for that design. And the aqueduct crossing design, she said it would be 75 to 100,000. So I'm not sure, Kathy, if there are any other CPC applications, but it seems like the feasibility study for this could fit along with those.
Yeah, can I comment?
And the aqueduct might be able to merge in with the trail. It might come forth as all one project.
Ashley, did you have something?
Yeah, just in terms of timing, I know I mentioned a project like this can take, a decade to really come to completion. And I think with it being a priority of the master plan, or really fitting in with the priority in the master plan, we just felt like it was a good time now to get the ball rolling. And like I said, there is a lot of funding available starting this year because of COVID and ARPA funding. I don't know what ARPA stands for, American Recovery Act, something like that. Which is why we felt like this was good timing. But I did want to mention too that the Trails Committee, we had been under the impression that the town of Westboro had brought this to the Trails Committee. And that the Trails Committee felt like they didn't have the capacity to take it on, which is why they had said no. And the fact of the matter I learned last night was that they had been brought the presentation about the 1 mile piece from Westboro to Shrewsbury near Northborough Crossing, but they hadn't ever seen this other 6 mile piece that had been mapped out. And when they did see it, they were very excited about it and the fact that it could dovetail nicely with the work on the aqueduct bridge. So I just wanted to mention that, and that, they hadn't turned down this project, hadn't ever seen it, even though we thought they had. So.
Millie, you're on CPC. Do you know, I guess you haven't, applications aren't due until November. So I don't,
Right.
So you don't really have insight into.
Yeah, there's other applications.
Okay.
Of hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Okay. Okay, good to know. Okay, so any other comments or questions from board members?
So Ashley, you said you're going to do some more work on the mapping, because I just had some questions on the mapping, but I don't want to ask them if you're going to be putting more details in.
Yeah, I'm probably not the best person to ask about the mapping. So what I provided was what the town of Westboro, the folks on the Trails Committee over there, had provided to us, and I find them difficult to follow, which is why I'm going to be hiking all of those areas and creating more detailed and more understandable maps. So
okay, one quick question that I do have is that this proposed trail would end in going into Berlin, is that correct? Does Berlin have a connector? I can't remember if you said something about that.
They don't at this point. They have been discussing it, but they haven't had really any serious movement on that at this point. And they have a couple of big conservation projects that they're working on right now. So
Okay,
They're
so
not
it
quite
would be, effectively a turnaround where it ends on our part.
yeah, with the hope that, you know,
Mhm.
Berlin joins and
Yep.
allows us to connect up with the Central Rail Trail.
Okay.
Okay, so Ashley, your question, your original point of presenting is you were looking for the planning board to write a letter of endorsement.
Yes.
Okay, so in terms of Michelle, it's you're not in favor. How are other board members feeling about this? Amy, it
I
sounds
would.
like you're in
Yeah,
favor.
I'm in favor.
Millie, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, I'd like to see it go through just to see, I mean, I'll get a chance to see it again in CPC. But I think it would be a neat thing if we could just begin to look at this.
Anthony, thoughts from you?
Definitely support it. And I think it's such a long-term project that and it's going to be little steps along the way. I'd like to see it get going because if it's going to take 5 to 10 years, it's a good starting point.
I also think, you know, different grants come down the line for different things. So say there's bike trail grants next year, but there aren't like I know that Kathy said they applied twice for the accessible around the senior center. If there's nothing available for that, but there's bike trail and rail trail grants, then you'd want to have the feasibility study so you can jump on it. Just like the aqueduct, they already have their feasibility study.
Okay, so it sounds like a majority of the board is in favor of endorsement. Kathy, do we need a vote for that?
Yeah, I would suggest just, you know, I mean, where you're taking official action that, you know, you as a planning board want to put in a letter of recommendation, you know, with the application that Ashley will be doing for the open space committee. So
Okay.
I would suggest you take a vote and either, you know, you can write it, I can write it, Carrie, whatever you want.
Okay. Is there a motion to write a letter of recommendation to support the CPC application for open space?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, Anthony,
Aye.
Millie,
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
Michelle,
No,
and Carrie's an aye. Okay, so either way, Ashley, thank you so much for bringing this forward and presenting it and doing work on it. It looks like, it sounds like it's been a hope of many, so thank you.
Thanks for your support, and I'll be providing you guys with better maps when I get them.
Yes, Millie's looking forward to walking them right away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, all right, great. Well, thanks for joining. And what you need this letter by?
The applications are due November 4th, but John Campbell did let me know that, you know, if the letter came in later, that might be okay. So.
Okay, so Kathy, I can always help with that if you have a busy week, or we can figure it out.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can put something together and send it to you, Carrie,
Okay,
for starters.
okay. All right, great. Thanks so much, Ashley.
Thank you all. Have a good
Okay,
night.
Thank you.
Aye,
Ashley.
thanks.
Okay, so it looks like Damon Amato is not presenting this evening on 75 Ridge Road. So that's still the case, Kathy? They're not ready yet?
Yes, that's correct. Oh, am I muted still?
Nope, I heard you. Yep.
Okay.
All right, so before we go back to bylaws, I just want to at least get through anything else on the agenda we want to cover, and we can kind of leave that last. It looks like minutes, I'm not sure everyone got a chance. I personally did not get a chance to review. I don't know if everyone else is ready
No,
for.
You
No.
actually don't, you actually don't have, that might have just been an older set, Carrie. You know,
Okay.
Melanie did do your last set, but I need to fill in a couple spots and with just some, some details that Melanie asked me to take a look at. I just haven't gotten a chance to do that. So
Okay.
we'll have those for the next meeting. I have an A&R, Carrie, if you
Sure.
want to look at that.
Sure, go ahead.
I mean, okay.
so Carrie, I'll recuse myself for this since I'm associated with this A&R.
Okay, sure.
You can make a note of that.
Yes, Melanie, for the minutes, if you could note that Michelle recused herself from this A&R.
Okay, of course. Hang on one second. Once again, I thought I had it lined up to, okay, can people see that?
Yes.
Okay, so let me just go in a little bit more. This is an A&R for Lincoln Street. That might be too much, but this is over here is the it's a 55 and older development. The name escapes me right now, but that Tony Abu built.
Yep.
Up here is the middle school.
Yep.
And let me just do this a little bit. That might be too small, but anyways, it's a piece of property. You've seen there's been a lot of at least activity in our office of people interested in this parcel, but you have what they're proposing, what the engineer here is proposing is 2 lots. Here's the lot line that they want to create. So there's this particular lot and then this particular lot. They meet, I mean, basically all the A&R is that it meets, frontage and area, and, both of them do. They have the proper amount of frontage, and they both have more than enough acreage. So that, and then, obviously it's in the residential C district and also in the residential B district. And the residential B is more restrictive than residential C. So the residential B dimensions have to be met. So that's why each one of the lots has either 100, it has to be a minimum of 150 feet of frontage, and it has that. And then each lot has to have at least 40,000 square feet. And again, they have more than that. Each one of the lots has more than that. So then, obviously the next step, someone would either be looking at, 2 single family houses here, or if somebody wanted to go through the special permit process and do duplexes. There was originally a gentleman that came and went all the way through with the design review committee. And the design review committee, approved the 2 designs that he had. So we finished out the process with the design review committee. And then he chose, I guess, not to pursue it. So they're back on the market, and that's it. It's 2 lots.
Okay.
So is the current owner dividing them?
Yes.
At this-
Yes. It's
oh,
the,
okay.
yeah. It's
So
the
they
current
didn't-
owner. I think they're often realty trusts. This is, the applicant is June Roman.
Mm-hmm.
And the owner of she's a trustee, and the property is in the Warren Oberg 1988 Family Trust.
Okay.
Go ahead, Amy.
Kathy, you mentioned duplexes, but you mentioned they have to follow RB, and 2-family dwellings aren't allowed in RB, so they'd have to go for a variance.
Yes, if they were gonna pursue it, or if they, if there was a way they could configure it so that the majority of the lot was in the RC district, somebody could do that and go for and do that with a special permit.
Where's the divider between RC and RB on this?
Right here.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So again, I have no idea what someone will do. I'm just letting you know what, I mean, it's in a residential neighborhood, it's going to be residential.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, my question was just because you said special permit, but then I looked it up and it says they're not allowed by special permit. So that was my question.
Yeah, so in the RC, sorry about that, Amy, but in the RC district, They would be allowed, if someone wanted to keep the buildings, in the RC district, they can do that. Or if they were, I mean, as you see, this is the wetland line.
Yeah.
So this is basically all a no build. So I think that you will, again, we don't have any house plans or anything, but I believe that you will see the houses down here in the RC district.
Okay.
And then I know that this is just hypothetical, I suppose, but if they were to get a variance, do they still need a special permit from the planning board?
Well, they would only need a variance, Carrie, if the houses were going to be placed up in here, and there's just no way under our wetlands regulations that I mean, there would be a house anywhere here. The only uplands you have is right here and right here. And then on this lot, so this is where they're proposing the lot line. On this lot, the only way to get here is to snake up, the side here, which someone could do. But so I would anticipate, I mean, just knowing the property, knowing, that the original person, I mean, again, he's no longer in the picture, but his houses were his duplexes that he was proposing. It never reached the planning board, but they were in the RC portion of the property.
Okay, but in the event of a variance, would they then need a special permit for the duplexes?
No, it's like the variant. We've asked town council about that before. It's like the variance, trumps the special permit, because if someone were to, and I keep saying if someone were to build in the RB and wanted a duplex, they would be going for a variance there. So they wouldn't even need a special permit. The special permit is just if they build down here in the residential C district. But if they built up here in the residential B district and wanted duplexes.
Although I think for the duplexes, we have no use variances are allowed. I can't remember. Did we do that for the?
Well,
it doesn't matter. It's fine.
Either way, no houses are coming back here.
No, just curious.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do
Any
they
other
have 30,000 square feet in the front? I'm just curious. I don't know if you even know.
No, I don't know. I don't know based on this.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
So we'll have that. Now, Carrie, I know you're traveling, so if you want to have someone else come in to sign it.
When is it due?
This came in last week, so we have the 21 days, but I mean, any one of the planning board members can sign it.
Okay. If it needs to be this week, I could only do Friday. So I'll let, if someone else wants to sign it, then that's earlier, that's okay. Maybe why don't we first take a vote and get that squared away, and then we can figure out signature. So is there a motion to approve the A&R for 9597 Lincoln Street?
I make a motion to approve the A&R for 9597 Lincoln Street.
Second. Oh, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, Millie,
Aye.
Amy,
Hi.
Anthony,
Aye.
and Carrie's an aye. Okay, and Michelle has recused herself, so there's, that's the vote there. For signatures, does anybody want to go in this week to sign for the A&R? Or else I can do it Friday.
I mean, I can go in. What time is the town hall open till, Kathy?
On tomorrow and Thursday, technically till 4. I can always, well, actually tomorrow I can't stay later. Thursday I could, Millie, if that was helpful to you or anyone else. And then Friday we're here 7 to noon.
Okay, I will try to get in probably Thursday.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. So we'll have it on the counter, Millie, but I mean, one of us will, certainly be here, so.
Okay.
Alrighty, let's see. Okay, any subcommittee updates?
The master plan is meeting this week. We're meeting Thursday night. And then I
Okay.
think maybe later in our meeting, where we're going to go down the list of the recommendations I think Kathy sent out today. She highlighted all the areas where the planning board fell into recommendations.
Mhm.
And if you want to do it as a committee, we can just go down those. What they wanted for this week is to check off any that we've done or look at any that could be done, like easily, anything that the planning board is taking on or could take on in the near future.
Okay. All right, let's get back to that one. Does anyone else have any other? I was just trying to look up the quarterly meeting for CMRPC.
Yeah, that's coming up, Carrie, November, wait a minute, let me, I'll find the date. I sent I sent out that, the notice about that today. And let's just see. While I'm looking at that, I'll try to talk and do this at the same time, because Millie probably has not seen her email because I just sent it out as a save the date just before this meeting. But the CPC will be meeting on December 2nd. That will be the first meeting
Okay.
of the season for them.
Okay, so I found the CMRPC, so that's
Oh,
November
okay.
10th. Yep,
What's the date?
Wednesday, November 10th. And it is for the first in a series of visioning sessions for the comprehensive regional plan. Imagine 2050, a vision for central Massachusetts. So that's coming up for anyone interested.
So I actually, Carrie, what do you want me to, it's Central Mass information. A couple things I just wanted to point out to the planning
Oh,
board.
sure. Yeah, go right ahead.
So just and again, I think I had forwarded this to everybody if you wanted to see the details of it, but the, once a year, the Regional Planning Commission sends out the local planning assistant hours that, each community has. So that listing came out a few days ago, and we're at 18 hours. Usually it's a standard 12 hours, and then you each community can earn extra anytime anyone goes to a meeting. Board members and or staff attend a meeting or training or some sort of workshop that the Regional Planning Commission has put on. So that's just to give everybody just an overview. That we have 18 hours in our sort of in our folder right now. And then I also wanted to point out or remind everybody, I don't know if people were on the selectmen's meeting last night or not, but October 28th, next week, is when we will be conducting the walking audit on Bartlett Street. That was part of the post-occupancy monitoring report we had talked about as a community. And actually that was sort of formulated out of when Central Mass came to the planning board several months ago, and Sujatha, one of the staff members, made a presentation to you about traffic, sort of in general traffic issues and concerns. So the what we originally were calling a neighborhood walk audit is now officially being called a road safety audit. Mm-hmm. And that, like I said, will be taking place October 28th. There's been an agenda posted on it that will run from 9 to noon. And there are, a list of stakeholders that we had put together weeks ago with Central Mass Regional Planning Commission. So there'll be staff and there'll be residents participating in this. First, we'll meet at the high school, do some work, do some initial upfront work with planners from the Regional Planning Commission. Then we will go out for about an hour as a group and make our observations on Bartlett Street. And then we will go back to the high school for a conclusion for about another hour. So anybody is invited to attend, but with the boards, you can't run into a violation of the open meeting law.
Mhm.
So, if anybody did want to participate, it really, should only be one of you, two at the max, but I wouldn't even recommend two. I mean, if, you may not even, be, not that you're not interested in this, but I mean, it's, there's a whole life around this and there's people participating in this, and it's the focus is really on, getting neighborhood, getting residents to participate in this. It's not so much that it's a board exercise, it's a resident exercise.
Are there any board members that happen to be interested?
I can do it, I think, unless anyone else, unless Carrie, you're around, or Millie, or somebody wants it.
I don't think I can get away for that long.
All right,
I'd
so
be-
it doesn't sound like if you wanted to do it, it doesn't sound like you'd be competing for anyone under OML or anything, so.
Right.
Okay.
And I do think as long as we don't deliberate, I mean, if two people came, it shouldn't be a big deal. I
Right,
don't think.
but it's just that we're just letting all the boards know. It's, it's the appearance, and it's also
Oh,
when sometimes when board members participate, when we want general participation, like sometimes people don't fully participate if board members are there, and I'm not saying don't come, but
Yeah.
it's people just sometimes people are just more open when they believe and interpret that it's their exercise that they're doing, and not a coming from boards. I don't know if I explained that well enough, but what we're trying to do is generate participation from the neighborhood.
All right, well, it sounds like Amy, you're the only one interested anyway, so if you want to attend and put on your resident hat and do it that way. Up to
And I
you.
sent everybody a link, to that today. So if you, and I did not anticipate that anyone would, look at that information. There's some prompts in there as far as, things to think about before you come to the meeting, so that you're a little prepared, better prepared for the discussion.
Okay.
So those were the two, Carrie, that I just wanted to touch base on with Central Mass.
Okay, great. Let's see. So then why don't we, and if no other updates there, then why don't we get back to the master plan list there? Amy, is that something, do you want to lead this part of the discussion?
sure. I could try to share screen. Let me see.
I've got it, Amy, if you want.
Okay, either way.
Oh, we all hate this scrolling part, but it's going to be scrolling if you want to go through every page. But go ahead. That's the first page, Amy.
Yes.
Or if you want me to just go over.
No, I read through them today and stuff, so I had some ideas. We could go through them. I don't know if anybody else has had time to reread the master plan recommendations.
Not in a while. So if you,
The first three, though, I did see as more of open space, although we are involved too. So I thought maybe at some point, maybe we have a joint meeting with open space if it's planning board and open space. The priorities are conduct a cost of community services, build off of the 495 Metro West development, and review the existing zoning bylaws and Conservation Commission regulations for needed revisions. But I think it would be good to get open space input on those. It was Ashley who had brought conduct the cost of community services study to the master plan originally. And so I actually asked her about it, and she thought it could be an open space, something that they could take on. So really for the first three, I do think we could be a part of it, but it may fall more on open space.
So just to back up for a second, the exercise is to look at what we've either already done or what can be done in the short term, or
Right.
like
Yeah.
in terms of like prioritizing, or just a general discussion.
Just kind of a general discussion about what falls under our categories. Okay. And is there anybody here that thinks, conduct a cost of community services study? I heard that that's not super time consuming, so that might be something I thought maybe we could do, but it also is something that open space could do.
Okay.
And if I can just interject a little too, some of these things all of these were obviously, very much discussed at the master plan steering committee level. But like, just as an example, and not to pick on this, but it's the very first one, sure, there's a lot of value in doing a community services study, but you also need to look at, need to put it in context. And this community to date, and I'm going back years here, has been very supportive of open space protection and open space acquisition. And to the point where you have your open space committee, you have your community preservation committee, just about every year, the voters at town meeting support a warrant article for the funding of open space, and that funding goes into the conservation fund, and then the Conservation Commission and the Open Space Committee work together to look at parcels to purchase. So at this point, sort of in the at this stage in the community, that it sort of would be a waste of money to do that, because you don't at this point, you don't need to prove that to anybody, the community.
I thought this was more about, and not that it's not about what you're saying, but also the other side of this was like, when the planning board, and why I thought we were even on this, is when we're looking at applications and we're talking about the economic value of whatever is proposed to move into that spot, that there's also competing or complementary information about what's the value of that open space, or what's the opportunity cost of taking up that open space. I thought it was to give us a picture, to assign a value to open space when we're looking at applications. Does that sound familiar to anybody? I thought that at one point that was the pitch for that.
That's what I thought it was too.
I mean, unless the land is for sale, unless it's being offered to the town, it's kind of a moot exercise. But
sometimes they are, like, say 429 came up for sale, and it could have been, we could have voted as a board that we wanted to look into keeping it, or do we want to sell it? So just to have that.
You made that decision, but I mean, again, I don't want to belabor it. You don't want to be here until 10 o'clock tonight talking about things that are already in the open space. They've already been decided. These are already recommendations in the open space. I'm just talking about, in general, there's just, let's always just look at the bigger picture of and also, what's more important. And that's not, I don't think that's what your exercise was tonight. I'm not really clear myself on what the exercise is tonight, but
just if there's anything we could check off that we could do. I didn't know exactly how hard it was to do a cost of community services. So I was just looking into it. But
Okay.
I just have a question on the second one, LU 1-2. Kathy, do we have a map of the priority habitat areas and the priority preservation areas? And
Yep.
is there a map?
Yep.
Is
Yep,
it online
it's all
or-
done with the 495 partnership.
Right. Okay. The 495 partnership, I actually do have a copy of, and that was done in 2012. I was just wondering if there are any place on our like zoning maps or online that someone could quickly look at to get an inventory of the local priority development areas.
No, it's not. You'd have to go into the 495 partnership.
Okay, I have to look at it. I did look at it the other day, but the maps were so small, I couldn't even figure out, like it showed the whole state. At least when I looked at it online. So to zone into Northborough and see where the priority habitats were, it was like a green dot.
Well, it's not, again, the compact isn't so much about the priority habitats. It's about the areas where you want to focus development on. And then, you know, each town also, as part of the exercise, back in, you know, 2010, 2012, I was on the partnerships board at the time. And so we looked at, you know, where development was most likely, you know, to be occurring. So again, doesn't need to be a huge focus here.
I just, as a planning board member, would be interested to see how many priority habitat areas we have and where they are. I just didn't know if there was anywhere on a map that we could look at that. So, but is there do we have only like 2 priority habitat areas? Is it part of the open space plan? Do you know if it's in that?
Well, the heritage program in Massachusetts doesn't necessarily map the habitat priority areas because we don't want people sort of invading those priority habitat areas. We want those to stay protected. So I can, you know, certainly share with you, you know, the old information from like 2010. I don't know when the last time the plan was updated by the partnership.
I just know down in Bartlett, there was one we saw in our plan. There was a habitat, well, I forget what it's called now, in nature. It was a trail. And I think there's one over by 290. So I'd be interested to see where they were. Okay. So I guess for the first 3, I just have a couple questions. And some of them, Kathy, I could ask you offline, but I don't know if it's better to ask as a planning board online.
Well, I think you should be discussing this in public. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I just didn't know how late you wanted to go tonight.
Well, you know, I
I don't have that
but-
many questions.
But again, I have no idea, Amy. I mean, and I'm sorry, Carrie, I don't mean to dominate this, but you know, if Amy's the only one who's prepared to do this exercise, should you not do it another night?
No, I
Well, we
think
can
it's
just
fine
say-
to just run through.
That's an open space, just pull it up and they just went down and John Campbell went down each of them. And I don't think any of them knew it was coming.
All right, so let's just go down each and decide what have we done or what is an easy task for us to check off the list. Is that what we'll do?
Sure. And I do have like 5 questions because I did take notes and as the planning board rep for for master plan, it'd be good to have the answers going into the meeting.
Okay.
Okay, so as we go down, LU1-5 and the stormwater management bylaws, I think Kathy had mentioned have been done,
Okay.
right?
So are you going to write down like, or whose tracks, like what's already checked off? Is this something?
I'll track it and
Yeah.
unless if someone else can show me another one that we have done that I don't know of, I can track it and bring it forward on Thursday.
Okay.
We have a master sheet that the consultant that's working with the implementation committee has put together. And, you know, the group, again, has only met twice, only once with the consultant and myself. Neither one of us were present at the last meeting. And so that the the implementation committee, you know, the purpose of that master sheet is to sort of do exactly what you're doing tonight, is once the implementation committee comes up with, you know, which they've just started to do, is, you know, looking at the top 3 or 4 short-term recommendations and then overall recommendations. You know, then we'll start using the sheet to track who's doing what, you know, where we're at with the progress of each one of those.
Yeah. One thing we discussed though was trying to do as much as we could in between meetings, as we only meet once a month. And the grant schedule for this year is going to start coming up in December, January. So if there are items that certain people want to look at, you really have to get going.
Mhm.
Okay, so, but I'm done with the first page. The second page, those are all part of the downtown. And I think what the master plan implementation committee will probably come to is that, and we discussed it, is there will probably be needed a downtown revitalization committee. And there are some grants coming up next year that could help with some of the downtown revitalization too. So I don't know if there's anyone on this page anyone wants to talk to. Some of them might change. Like when I read LU 2-3 and it talks about mixed use in the downtown, that we do have some mixed use. We do allow mixed use in the downtown. And because of COVID and people ordering online right now, I don't know if we have a lot of commercial space that's available. So I don't know how mixed use will work going forward, but I guess we can have consultants to talk to that. But if you look at like 89 West Main Street, all the apartments have been rented out or the condos have been sold, but no one has gone into any of the commercial space in the downstairs. So as a planning board, we might want to look at, you know, it seems like the housing downtown is popular, but there is a lot of space for lease right now. So I don't know how much more mixed use the town could absorb.
Honestly, Amy, I think on that, it's a little hard to assess in
Right.
between last year and this year. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. I think a lot of things, and they talked about that with the master plan, some things might even change because COVID changed things.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for all the downtown design study, visual preference surveys, I don't know, is there anything that the planning board could start on? Like, could we send out a visual preference survey or design study?
I think one of the things, you know, first of all, you've created an implementation committee to take a look at what
Yep.
the priorities should be. And again, they've only met twice so far. And what we envision is that the all of the downtown information is going to, you know, as the implementation committee, because that came up as one of the number one top priorities of several members. So as we all suspected, you know, downtown, you know, rose to the top as far as a priority coming out of the master plan. So what we would be doing is taking a look at all of the recommendations having to do with the master plan, and then, having to do with the downtown, and then sorting through, you know, which are the first steps that we should take, you know, defining, you know, we have a boundary today for downtown, but, you know, we need to take a look at, well, what is the downtown? Do we want to expand the downtown? Do we want to redirect the downtown? Do we want to enlarge the downtown area? And then, you know, through that, you know, you would sort of do these visioning sessions. And so it all has to come together as a package. You really just don't want to, you know, kind of spin off and do one thing. You know, I mean, it's all going to be part of a bigger picture.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that that's something that we would definitely want to collaborate on at the implementation committee, because you don't want to have open space going saying what should we be looking at for that downtown committee, and then have duplication of efforts and a lot of energy just not really being as productive. So I know historic district has some interest in and would like some input in that.
Yep. Okay. All right. I think some of it too, like you can, when it says develop a program to promote planting and sustain growth of street trees, some of that could actually be helped through the planning board with design review. You know, I think there are little areas that we can touch on. I think the big picture of downtown is going to take a group, but I think there are little areas where we can make a difference.
Yep.
And then so obviously there are grants out there because we see our neighbors getting them. So how do we still apply for those grants? Like say the facades downtown, like I forget which town got something about that, but if we wanted to do little things like that, or any of these little grants along the way, how do we take advantage of them like our neighbors are doing without waiting for this?
Well, it's not so much, patience is part of this whole process, as we all know. But a facade, say if you wanted to do a facade improvement, and so we would probably look towards the Main Street program at DHCD about doing a facade improvement. But I would think, first of all, in the bigger picture, what you want to do is, again, you want to define what it is that you want in the downtown, or do you want to make any changes in the downtown? I think those things first have to be decided first, and then you talk about, okay, well, if we want to introduce other kinds of uses, and do we want to change the density of the downtown? Do we want to change where the parking lots are going to be located? I mean, that all has to do with the design of the building and what that footprint is going to look like. And then you can, you develop some design standards, because you really can't have a facade program unless you have standards in place that you have to physically show people. So, and the design guidelines that we have may turn out to be just absolutely appropriate. There may not need to be any changes, but you got to go through that whole discussion about do we want to make any changes? And then you can be like, okay, well, this is what we want the downtown to look at. All right, well, let's apply for a facade grant. And so that we've got $3,000 or $4,000 of pocket money that we can distribute to applicants that could help with their sign improvements, or awnings, or things like that.
So in parallel, does it make sense then for Amy, for design review, to start looking at these design standards just as like doing something in parallel, so that when the time comes, we don't start over fresh looking at design standards if we know we at least need to review them, or have we already reviewed them? It's not necessary.
No, well, we have design standards for the downtown, and going back to something that Ashley mentioned, the town, every town in Massachusetts is about to come into several $1 million of in short, what we're calling COVID money. But part of that is, I've already had the discussion with the town administrator. Part of that is going to be earmarked for our downtown project. One of the things that I'm working on right now is putting together a capital budget for this year. It'll go to town meeting this year, so that there will be a capital budget available for the downtown work, for starting off, whether you want to call it a feasibility study or whatever it is. But again, taking all of these out of the master plan, having the implementation committee rank which ones that they want to, start with, and then, and off we go with our downtown project.
So
So I mean,
Amy,
we're
what
going
is
for money
your,
this year.
okay,
Well, I
Amy,
think that's all great information, because that was something I was going to ask is, I was going to ask if our financial planning person could come in and speak to it, but it sounds like Kathy is going to go with something in the budget. So it would be great to see that once it's done, what's going to go into the budget for planning for downtown redevelopment. But back to the design review, they're guidelines, not standards. So I do think the design review guidelines are good. I'm not sure if they were really enforced that highly. Like, they've been good for years, saying, you should have parking this way and trees that way. And I was thinking at the next design review meeting too, is we should discuss, there are streetscapes trees that we could have a list of to use when you're doing a downtown application. And so we have the appropriate trees being put in place. And if there's a building that can't have trees, maybe there are planters. So I was planning on hopefully meeting with design review and having a nice discussion about it. But I guess one thing that does happen is, what happens if you can't really enforce the design review guidelines? Like we have sideways buildings and other things. I don't want to go into details, but there were certain things that could have made a difference, but didn't, even though we had the design review guidelines. So I don't know. We'll look into it. I have some ideas.
okay.
But I'm happy to hear there is going to be money in the capital budget for the downtown plan. So maybe we can skip talking about those right now. So I guess I can, unless anyone has questions, I can just ask the last couple of questions I had.
No,
And
or is there anything else we need to check off on this section?
the only thing I think we've done is we've done the hazardous waste bylaw, and I already, that would be checked off. But perform the 61 programs, that's open space. There's town-wide guidelines for commercial industrial development. We actually do have design review guidelines for industrial. I have a copy, but I don't know if they were ever accepted or implemented. So we could review those.
They were, Amy.
Okay, I was just double checking. I've never heard them
They
talked
were.
about.
They were.
Okay. Are they online too for people to be able to access?
They should be. If they're not, Amy, I'll double check, but I mean, they should be, because that was a few years ago.
Right. Yep.
But I'll certainly check on those.
Okay. One of the LU 4-2 we had talked about last time. It's a goal. It says consider updating, expanding the existing major commercial overlay district for Route 20. So that was something we actually discussed about as a planning board at our last meeting. I don't know if that's something that we would want to talk about this year, or if you want to wait for master plan. Where did we say it stopped? At Kimball Sand? Kathy, the commercial overlay?
Yeah, I mean, it's on the industrial zoned property on the southwest cutoff. So I mean,
Okay, so
basically, so I mean, it goes past Kimball Sand. It's the length of basically from Route 9, all across Northborough Crossing, Kimball Sand. I forgot the last property that's in there, because Kimball Sand is in between both, the driveways for Northborough Crossing. So I think it goes right to the secondary entrance to Northborough Crossing.
Okay.
That's the industrial district.
Okay.
And the overlay district applies to all of that part of the industrial district on the southwest cutoff.
So where we have a goal, LU, or recommendation, LU 4-2, consider updating and expanding the existing major commercial overlay district. Was the town thinking of making it go further down the road? I'm just curious.
I think so. I mean, I think that again, that's all part of the discussion is, you know, right now, the kind of development, the development of Route 9 is very limited because there is not sewer capacity. So if sewer capacity were to ever happen on Route 9, you know, you would probably want to look at, you know, bringing in some of the components from the major commercial overlay district, you know, into the highway district.
But not into the residential, you're going highway.
Right.
Okay, that was a question I was thinking.
Yeah.
And the LU 4-3 talks about increasing water sewer capacity, but right now we really can't, right? That's up to Marlboro.
Yeah, well, on Route 9, it's actually a Westboro issue.
Yeah.
Because that, I mean, and it's a much bigger discussion than I have the knowledge for. But you know, that's something that, you know, we could probably talk with the, you know, DPW director about. And then obviously they're a partner to this, you know, as far as the you know, the partners in the leadership as far as how these recommendations get implemented.
Mm-hmm.
So really, if it's contingent on sewer, then maybe LU 4-2 is not as short-term as we think, because we did talk and consider updating it. I think we decided maybe it's more about looking at the uses versus the overlay. I don't know if we reached that final conclusion, but if it's in any way connected to the sewer water capacity, I don't know how that changes the timeline. Maybe not as simple as it would look here. Short term, low money, high priority seems like it would be easy, but.
And some of the things too, as far as like just you sort of picking on this one, but, you know, as far as updating, you know, you might want to look at, you know, and you might not, but you might want to look at, are there other uses that we would want to see in the major commercial overlay district, you know, as it exists today? Are there other uses? You know, if you look at the bylaw, there's certain uses that are allowed by right in the overlay district, and then there's certain uses that are allowed by special permit. You know, you might want to take a look at that at some point. Is, you know, do we need to switch that up at all to encourage additional, you know, development?
So is there a difference between the major commercial overlay districts and the commercial overlay district?
No, the only thing that we have is the major commercial overlay district.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. And that is over all the industrial zones in town.
Just in the southwest corner, Millie. Just in all the industrial land down by Route 20, you know, on both sides of Route 20 and up to Route 9. So basically, you know, just in a real ballpark, it's the ballpark, no pun intended, but the fields, the medical facilities, and then across the street, you know, the Northborough Crossing, the upper portion, the lower portion, Kimball Sand. So that's the area that that overlay district was designed for.
Okay, and so when we're talking about expanding it, you're talking about expanding it in size or expanding it in use?
You could be doing both.
Both.
Yeah.
Both. Okay.
Okay. So if we go down to the next one, I don't know.
You want the next page, Amy?
Sure. That seemed more of open space. They cover those already. For goal 1, the highlights, so I don't think we need to do anything there. And for goal 2, it seems like we're getting into historic, which Millie said Norma's been going through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's under I mean, the Historic District Commission is working on that plan now, right, Millie?
Yep.
the preservation plan?
Yep.
Yep. So that's why I thought we had to go through things, because it seems like open space is working on things, historic is working on things. So what are we as a planning board going to do to help?
Mhm.
Those are all historic.
I think you're going to be a lot busier than you might anticipate once this downtown
Mm-hmm.
gets going.
Yep.
Okay. And I see with NCH 3-1, it identifies short and long-term planning goals. I just had a question about the Westboro State Hospital land. It's 300 acres and half of it is RC and half of it is industrial. I was just wondering, Kathy, has it ever been offered to Northborough to be able to purchase that land? Like, I know Westboro bought 95 acres of their Westboro State land. I was just wondering the background of the Northborough land.
It's quite different in Northborough. The 300 acres that Amy's referring to is kind of roughly on both sides of Lyman Street, you know, kind of divided by Lyman Street. And that property is already under the control of other state agencies. So that, even though it's kind of like this tiered ownership with state land. So even though that land was originally controlled by the Westboro State Hospital, that property years ago was when the state deems it to be no longer an asset for the original use, which was the Westboro State Hospital. And again, this goes back years. This is way before Westboro was able to purchase the buildings that they were able to purchase. That land, those 300 acres, are roughly divided by the Department of Agriculture and by the Fish and Wildlife. So that has never been on the table as far as, you know, being offered to Northborough. Several years ago, at least 10 years ago, when there was a joint committee between the towns of Westboro and Northborough, and we worked with the state about the disposal of the Westboro State Hospital. Westboro was, you know, the majority of the hospital, the majority of the buildings are all in Westboro. So the state determined that all of that land could be sold. So the town did not necessarily have to purchase that, but it was offered to the town first, and the town did purchase it. And then the town sold it for the development of, you know, what you see now being built. I think it's a 55 and older community. And then the town did keep, you know, several acres, and you know, they've since built pickleball courts, and I think there's some field space there. And so, you know, they kept a lot of it for their own purposes, for their own recreation purposes. At the time, when all of that was happening, the only property that was potentially going to be disposed of by the state that's in Northborough is about 4 acres that's in between Hospital Road and Lyman Street. And also then across the street from that on Lyman Street, where you see Chauncey Hall, which is the biggest brick building that's in Northborough there. So you know, people may not recognize, know what Chauncey Hall is, but anyways, you see that, and then you see all these out buildings.
Mhm.
So, but what happens is it's offered to state agencies, and that state agency, the Division of Capital Asset Management, decided to keep that property. And you will eventually be seeing a proposal there. They are going to be creating a maintenance facility. It's a state of the art as far as energy consumption, gold level maintenance facility that they are going to be there, that they are going to build there. So all of the Chauncey Hall and all of those buildings are not going to be offered to the town. So the only potential is that 4 or so acres, that it's like, it's a small triangular piece, again, in between State Road, the state, it's called Hospital Road, and then Lyman Street. So we have been requesting information from the state as to whether that or not that's even something that they're going to consider disposing of. So if and when, that's basically the land that we could potentially be looking at. But that's that's it. So.
Okay, it was just in the master plan until we had 300 acres, so it's deceiving.
Well, it's 300 acres of state hospital land. It's not 300 acres of town land.
Yep, so could that ever be sold in the future? Or are there protections in place on it?
Well, I don't know what the, arrangements are with those other state agencies, but.
Yeah, because when I looked at the GIS map, unless, I don't know how accurate GIS maps are, but it still said it was Westboro State Hospital land, where
Yeah,
there's another.
It'll always be considered Westboro State Hospital land.
Oh,
and then,
okay.
like I said, then there's tiers to the ownership. So it's basically, it's state land.
Yeah, I know we have some parcels in town that say Mass Fish and Wildlife.
Mhm.
So this is Westboro State Hospital land, but you said that Mass Fish and Wildlife, it owns half of it?
Yeah, yep, they I mean, owns might not be the correct term, because the state owns it, and these are state agencies, and the state agencies are offered state land as to whether or not, they want to add it to their holdings. So
Okay.
there's agricultural land out there, and there's fish and wildlife land out there. And it's been
Is there a way to find out if it's protected? Some of them are protected, that they'll never be developed. I know you said there's gonna be a maintenance facility, but I was just wondering how we could find out if there are protections in place for Northborough, or if that's something maybe I should ask open space.
What do you mean protections, Amy? That the state has some?
Like did the Mass Fish and Wildlife, do they have like a conservation restriction on it, or do they have, we have a lot of properties in town that we have conservation restrictions on that cannot be built on. Are the Mass Fish and Wildlife areas, are those restricted, or could they be sold in the future? I was just curious.
Sure, anything can be sold, but any state land, the process that the legislature has set out is that first state land is offered to other state agencies, and then if the state agencies pass on it, then it's offered to the community.
Okay. I'm just curious, do you know what that maintenance facility is? Is it like for trucks and vehicles, or is it, what are they maintaining there?
It's for all of their vehicles.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. I was just curious about the 300 acres because it's been out there a lot. All right. And I'm sure no one you probably don't have an update on White Cliffs. They haven't met for a long time.
No, I think we've met once or twice during COVID. There's a consideration. There's a discussion right now about when the next meeting is going to be, but I don't have a date for that.
Okay, so they'll start meeting again. Where was that left? Like,
well, I got to go back and refresh myself. I don't want to misspeak at this meeting, but there was a whole feasibility study done as far as and there was a number of options that were laid out as far as what could potentially happen with the property.
Okay. And 13 Church Street is supposed to go out to RFQ?
Yes, that has been drafted, and that's being reviewed by staff right now.
Okay. And Boundary Street is probably still up in the air?
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything happening.
Anything on that? I just want to touch on all these because I know people ask a lot. And 4 West Main Street was talked in detail last night at the selectmen's meeting. For anybody who didn't watch it, I think the town administrator, I don't want to speak to it all either, but he said it was going to come back to the town next year, May 2022.
Mhm.
And once the town takes it back, then there'll probably be a feasibility study then to decide what to do with it.
Hmm.
That's what I get out of the selectmen's meeting last night. Is that what you know, Kathy, too?
I was at the Trails Committee meeting last night, so I didn't hear the discussion last night.
Oh, okay. They asked the town administrator and he said, May 2022, it comes back to the town and then they decide, do they surplus it or use it or what they're going to do with it.
Want me to go on to the next page, Amy?
Sure. Unless anyone else has questions.
No.
Okay, so for housing, that's also a big bundle. So I think that would probably have a committee coming out of master plan implementation if I had to guess. Right now, the downtown revitalization was #1, so housing probably isn't going to be talked about right away unless somebody here would like to talk about any of these.
Yeah, I guess the only thing, looks like it may not be the first thing to go, but we have talked in the past about affordable senior housing and possibly having some sort of forum or ability to hear like some sort of feedback loop where we can figure out where would seniors want to live. We had that whole discussion about, do they really want to live downtown where they can't park, or we just didn't really know, or do they really want to leave their homes? Are they looking for bigger, smaller? We just had a lot of questions around that. I think at some point, I don't know the right timing, but if we're going to explore these different uses or specifically affordable housing and affordable senior housing, when's the right timing to have that sort of feedback session, I guess, from anybody?
I actually have learned recently through my mother-in-law. She lives in Linfield and they have an amazing senior housing ideas that if Northborough wanted to look into it, they could. But where she bought a condo, they sell it like cheap. So she got a 1,200 square foot condo for $250,000. But in the end, you have to sell it back to the town and it goes to the next person on the list. And they have a committee and the prices go up a little bit each year and their condo fees, but it seems really affordable for the seniors who want a smaller place to live. They want to stay in town. And it was actually a really beautiful development. And she loves living there. And there's a lot of, but it's pretty much the prices stay stable and they stay cheap for that because Linfield is way more expensive than even Northborough. So to find something for $250,000 in Linfield would be hard to do. But they have 3 senior developments in their town and they're all run that same way. And it's very popular. She was on a 15-year waiting list. Yep. So, but it's something that I think Northborough could even look into. I found it online at their on their town webpage and it explains the whole process. It's really interesting.
Would you mind sharing that?
Sure, I could email that to everybody or email it to Kathy and she could forward it.
What defines senior housing as opposed to retirement or over 55?
This was actually over 55, surprisingly, or over 58, and you had to be a resident of the town, but everybody there is 70 and over. Maybe at 55, they get on the list.
Yeah.
But most of the people don't want to live there at 55,
Right. Yeah.
So even though it's 55 and over, she would say her and all her friends, nobody there is under 70.
Interesting. Yeah.
But it's really pretty too, like the way they developed the whole area there. So, but I can forward it out. And if you read it, it's like only a 1-page document, but it was a really good idea. And I don't even think, I asked her if it was a town employee that ran the housing committee, and she said he was a retired police officer, but he wasn't an employee of the town now.
Hmm.
But they have meetings, they have their own committee,
Mhm.
so.
I mean, and some of these things say ongoing, though I don't know to what extent we're proactively doing it. So for example, H1-3, I don't know to what extent we as a board are working with anybody in particular. Is that something we should be doing, or how would that even get started? So let's see, that's an ongoing, couple ongoing. Awareness around accessory dwelling units. I think we added to our bylaw last year. I don't know if we can check it off. There are still maybe there's more to come there.
Well, there might also be there, I think on that one, there are a couple other committees on that, if I'm looking at it correctly. H1-3. Who else is on that?
Well, the Housing Authority, the partners looks like BOS, us.
Yeah,
Who's HPC?
The Housing Partnership Committee.
Oh,
I
okay.
think that's what it is.
Which is
Okay.
different than the Housing Authority. Okay.
Right. That was, it doesn't exist right now, but
Oh,
that's one of the recommendations in here
They've got it to do.
is about,
Whoever
is about, restarting. So
yeah, restarting that
HPC is
committee.
the Housing Partnership.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. So maybe as that happens, like we could invite them to a board meeting and just have a conversation or learn more about what their
How we
goals
can
are.
help them.
Yeah.
Okay.
You want the next page, Amy?
Sure. Sure. Okay, so I'm just trying to read. So this is the downtown visualization study. So this will be all part of the downtown plan.
Yep.
And the housing production plan will go back to the housing committee that doesn't exist yet.
Well, we've done a housing production plan in the past with, I don't believe that we had, I don't think we had a housing partnership at that time. I think it had already stopped meeting. But your housing production plan is all about, where are you going to put affordable housing if you want to do a housing production plan, where you're going to put it, how many units and how many years are you going to do it. So it's a very proactive plan. It's not just something that we take a look at and say, oh, well, wouldn't it be nice? It's actually, okay, we like a lot of communities say they'll put together a housing production plan if they are surplusing some town property to a developer, and the RFQ that goes out or the RFP that goes out is all about, if you want to purchase these, whatever, 20 acres from the town, then you're going to build us 80% of the units are going to be affordable housing. I'm just making these numbers up, but so your housing production plan is something that's very proactive. And when we did ours, we timed it knowing that the Avalon development was coming, and so we were able to get credit for having a housing production plan because it was going to be carried out within the next 5 years with the development of Avalon, and 25% of that development being affordable. So we did the plan, and then we were able to say, we were successful in that plan.
Not sure that would then need to be a short-term plan, only because, we just did it and we did Avalon. And I also went through the Department of Housing and Community Development 40B subsidized housing inventory that comes out every year. And 77 out of 351 towns have met the 10% for 40B, and we're one of them. So that's only 22% of the towns in the state, which is amazing. But for Northborough, we're pretty good. You know, we're high up on that list compared to some of the others. Just a little kudos to the town. I think they've, you know, we have done good with open space, with housing. I do think there are a lot of good has happened. So now we'll focus on downtown.
Mm-hmm.
If the committee so chooses.
Mm-hmm.
And that rail trail sounds like a good idea to me. No. Little plugs here and there, sorry. Okay. This goes back to the cost of community services study, so we'd have to do that first. And you'd have to revive the housing partnership. So those probably aren't short term right now. Economic development, that all points back to downtown. And here's the signage and facades. Create a downtown planning revitalization committee. Hopefully that will happen pretty quick in the master plan implementation committee. So unless anyone else has questions, I think these will all come out of the master plan.
Where, isn't there creation of an economic development committee of sorts in this as well?
Yep.
I think there is. Yep. It must be down further.
Yeah, that's on, yeah. Under economic development, I think. Yeah, it's under economic development recommendation. Number ED-2. ED2-2.
So the ones on in these pages, these are midterms, so we can probably go forward. Oh, was it on that page, Millie?
It
Oh, yeah,
was
it's right. ED1.
ED2-2.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay, so it was on that page. It just wasn't under us. So
So if you scroll up for a second, it was under Board of Selectmen.
Having fun, Kathy?
Oh, no, sorry.
And I'm squinting.
Oh,
I can tell.
ED2.
Are you having fun? We're all like, what?
ED2, I think it's the next one. It's in the next
Yeah.
one. Yep. There we are. Evaluate the, okay, so that's under just Board of Selectmen on that one. I mean, this is a moderate priority, I guess it's listed here.
mhm.
I'd argue if we're, it goes hand in hand with downtown. If we're gonna bother with revitalizing downtown, I think economic development goes hand in hand with making sure the right businesses get in there and they survive, or else what have we built it for? So just to consider, maybe if there's a feedback opportunity for you.
Okay. The ED2-3 you're talking about?
No, ED2-1.
Oh, okay, that's short term.
Oh, it's a short term. Okay. And what is moderate? Is that the priority level?
That is, yeah.
Priority.
Yeah.
I just think it goes hand in hand with downtown. If we create this amazing downtown, we want to make sure we can support it.
Right. Yeah.
From an economic development perspective. Okay.
I think that might have been one that was picked by a lot of members as a
okay.
priority. I'm not sure. I have to go back and look again.
All right.
Okay.
Well, and
I guess ED2-5, we can explore the idea of fiscal impact assessments or mitigation funding. We're almost at build out. So I didn't know with the big parcels that are left. That was actually a question I had. for Kathy, and maybe as a board, we can ask for it, or I'll make a ask for it, was, let me see where I wrote it down. There are only so many acres left of commercial and industrial land. And I thought it would be great to get a map, like the commercial zone and the industrial zone, and just show where the spaces that are left to be developed. So we can see, I think it was 300 acres of industrial and only 67 acres of commercial. But I think as a planning board and as a master plan implementation committee, I think it would be good to see where those parcels are. And that would also help, you know, say we want to add something commercial to industrial, we could say, well, what would go there? If it's in between, I'm just using an example, but say it's in between two big and like distribution centers, then there are a lot of things probably wouldn't really fit there. But if it's between, you know, something small, then maybe there would be another use. There are some spaces on Barefoot that could be commercial uses right off the rail trail. Not that I'm making another plug. I'm just trying to be funny. But I think of like in Vermont, when you go along the rail trail and they do have a lot of commercial uses, like restaurants and bike shops. But I don't know, what, do you guys agree? You know, I don't know, Kathy, is that hard to do? Could we get a map, just a zoning map, and just maybe a circle or a star where the acreage is left and how many acres?
Sure. Sure. I mean, you know, and any kind of mapping is possible. But it just like we're still working on, you know, the assignment about the property on Brigham Street. You know, we just a 2-second update on that. But just to show you how long it takes to, because there's only one person in the department that's working on this. I mean, there is only one person in that department. He's down a full-time staff person right now. But the you know, the project for the Brigham Street is what I had, you know, talked about at the past couple of meetings, was that we didn't have a way to determine to plug in the frontage. So, you know, to get over a certain amount of frontage and acreage, you know, because that's what you were looking at, was, you know, over a certain amount of square footage and then over a certain amount of feet for the frontage, and how many parcels does that then represent. And so we brought in a consultant to help us with that. They are one of our mapping consultants. And so they did come up with methodology as to how to evaluate the frontage. And then that's something that David Kane is working on right now. And he will probably be at one of your December meetings, or whenever you're going to meet in December. He will be able to come in and give you a presentation about that and how many parcels that represents. So to look at, just to say, well, how many vacant commercial properties do we have? How many industrial properties? It sounds like a really easy question, but you know, we need to know how deep you want to go into this, because we have assessors information that we can just look at, and they look at, you know, just, you know, they're coming at it from a tax standpoint. So they either have land that they consider to be vacant, but yet a piece of property that they consider, that the assessors might consider to be vacant. If you then go into like how, as planners, how we would look at that is, okay, well, just because it's vacant doesn't mean that it's developable. So then you almost then end up doing like a build out analysis, where you have to look at, okay, well, you know, how much of that land is vacant, and then what percentage do we take out for infrastructure such as roads? What do we take out for a percentage for slopes? We take out a percentage for wetlands. So if you're looking for just like a broad number, just, you know, sort of as a conversation starter here, we could use the assessor's information. and come up with a map that would show you what is considered vacant right now in the commercial districts, in the business districts, and what's considered vacant in the industrial districts.
Okay, well, I guess in the master plan, there was a build out analysis done. So when you read the land use section, it says there are 300 acres of undeveloped industrial land. And it might have even said, I don't have it in front of me now, it might even said like 30 acres of it cannot be developed for various reasons. I just didn't know if, because you went through the build out analysis with the consultants, if you knew or remembered where those parcels were. Like, did they come up when you did them before with the build out analysis?
I didn't do that analysis with the consultants as far as I didn't end up with a map. You know, I mean, that wasn't part of our scope. So we didn't end up with a map that mapped out all of that acreage. But I'm saying what we can do with existing data, which is more updated than from the master plan, because that's about 3 years old, the data.
Yep.
With today's assessor's information, we could provide a map, which I think would be a good starting point for what it is that you want to talk about.
Okay. Okay, if you think that.
Does everyone agree with that? Wanting a map like that?
I think it would be helpful if it's easy enough, or not easy, but possible.
Yeah, that's an easy ask. That's like just a few hours of putting that map together. Okay.
Okay, that would be great, because then we can get a feel for what is left. Thank you.
Yep.
I'm just reading down what's on this page. Seems like they would all fall under, let's see.
I just ran out of ink, so hold that thought.
For ED 3-1, where it says identify and encourage opportunities to incorporate office or incubator like concepts into under-occupied spaces, is that something that we could do with the bylaw? Like, could we encourage these? I think Hudson has an incubator office space in an old warehouse or factory. Is that something that can be, it's a kind of a good idea with a lot of people working from home, and there might be a location. I don't know if there's any developer interested or someone who would
You
lease
already
it.
have one of those, Amy. There's already a building that's over behind, across from Remains. Those buildings are all broken up into small cubicles or small offices of that style that's already happening in town.
So Fox Meadow.
Yes.
But so people, so like, say my husband has a meeting and is too loud here at home, I can say, you can rent out an office for an afternoon?
No, I don't know about that, but they have a model there where they might have that. It's similar to it. You can always go to Starbucks.
Well, that might be loud too, but I was just wondering if, yeah, what you were meaning, is it like monthly rentals or hourly rentals, or you don't know?
Is the incubator concept like a WeWork? Is that what that is? Or like the new place over in the Apex Center?
I think so. That's my understanding of what it could be.
Okay.
The other thing is that I think some of the incubator concepts are a little bit more long-term, in the sense that you actually can rent a space for like a project completion term, like 6-9 months. You know, a business may come in and need a certain amount of space for 6 months, 8 months to do a project, and then they're out.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure what it was, because I know in Hudson, like I said, they had a place where I think you can just rent it by the day. But it
And
was
that might be an option too.
yeah, where I think it was one building where it had just a bunch of different offices and shared copiers, and
Okay.
So is this something, not necessarily for this year, but it sounds like, it looks like it's related to land use. So this may be a use that we consider. If it's something like a WeWork and someone wanted that as a, well, is that, yeah, I guess that's a use.
It'd be interesting because it'd be good to, I'm not sure what's, popular. Like, what are other towns doing that are popular that we might want to offer here in Northborough?
Mhm.
But maybe that's where an economic development committee and person could help us.
Okay.
I don't know. I was just part of this. I was trying to think, we had talked about commercial and industrial.
Mhm.
Is there anything there? So I guess for publicly controlled sites such as the Westboro State Hospital, that would come off of that recommendation because it doesn't sound like we can develop a master plan to address it if we don't have control over it.
We're still waiting for, because I mean, that land in the middle could potentially be something if they are inclined to dispose of it and offer it to the town. But it's not the amount of acreage that we originally thought, because we were thinking more not of the 300 acres, Amy, but we were thinking of the Chauncey Hall area. That's that building complex and that land associated with it is what we, when I say we, when we have the joint committee between Westboro and Northborough, at the time, that's what Northborough was looking at, was that we could potentially end up with Chauncey Hall and the land around it.
But now there's
but
no way.
We had never envisioned the 300 acres. No, because the state's using it, but I mean, the state kept it.
Okay, but that might be something good to tell the master plan committee, like there is no need for a master plan for the Westboro State Hospital land, because with 4 acres, you don't really need a master plan.
You want to go on to the open space?
Sure, yep. I heard the dog park is going to be in front of CPC.
Yeah,
Is that true? Or
yeah, an application has been submitted by the Recreation Department and the DPW.
okay, have they picked the property yet or no?
No, that's what this is about, is a feasibility study to take a look at sites, potential sites in town, and to do a mini analysis of each one of the sites as to whether it would work or not.
Okay, was that around 40,000?
I don't remember what I don't remember what the application was for.
Okay, just trying to say how much money there is. Okay, so I guess we can keep going. MVP was already done, right?
Yep.
Oh, are we on? Okay, there we go.
Yeah, into public facilities.
Yep. Future growth projections, we'd probably have to get from somebody else. And reuse, repurpose, share space at municipal buildings. That might come up next year with the old town hall.
Yeah, the old town hall, and then you've got the current fire station, which at some point will be relocated to the new site. So you've got that building also to think about.
White Cliffs.
Yeah, White Cliffs. Yeah.
So this obviously isn't ours, but as a marketing person, I have to say it. I think COVID really underscored the importance of being able to communicate in a different way with different people in a quick manner. And I think the town obviously, responded to the situation. We had the code red alerts and stuff like that. But if you look at PFS 1-6, maybe that's something that ticks up a notch in priority just based on what happened, just experiencing that in COVID. And maybe we learned some lessons from it, or that would be great to have a knowledge share on, what did we learn? What do we wish we had? What would be great to have hopefully the next time we never have, but in the event we do, just something.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Then we haven't done transportation. Oh, here we go. Okay.
So how do we get ourselves on the next round of complete streets? What do we need? I know it's not as simple as it sounds. So is there something like we can do in parallel to help prep for that? Or how do we make that?
Yeah, well, actually, I can get you an update for your next meeting, but the Department of Public Works is working on complete street application.
Okay.
So yeah, so that is something that they are presently working on.
Great.
And then also this next one, I need stronger glasses or something, but as far as the sidewalk improvements, that is also something that I know that the DPW is working on, is coming up with, I don't know if they have done it or they're in the process of doing it, but doing a sidewalk inventory, examining, sort of ranking the conditions of all of the existing sidewalks, and then looking at where connections need to be made as a priority, between either, one neighborhood and another, or even just within an existing neighborhood. So I know that's all happening. It's all evolving with the DPW right now, but I can get you an update on both of those for an upcoming meeting.
It's really good to hear. I'll have to thank them for us, because I think those were like #1 things that the master plan implementation committee they were looking at sidewalks.
Mm-hmm.
So that's great that it's already started. That would be a biggie. T2-3. I think that would probably, we could meet with the Board of Selectmen on that, but that would probably be, it's already been discussed, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, when the whole, on one hand, it kind of seems like ancient history, but I mean, when the whole signalization of the downtown was done, at that time, it was explored with Mass DOT about, connecting Church Street to, Gale. I mean, there were a variety of traffic patterns examined as far as how to lessen the congestion in the downtown. Was there a way to more directly connect South Street to Church Street? And the present configuration is what was I guess adopted or agreed to stay with that present configuration. But I think, to me, I'm not an engineer, but I think also part of looking at the downtown, and if we talk about expanding, and when I say expanding, I don't mean I mean, it's not a physical expansion, but I mean, kind of like what we envision downtown to be, I think people envision a little bit more of Church Street than we normally had in the past to be part of the downtown, like, maybe all the way to the Unitarian Church, that's, and the, the new bridge over the Cold Harbor, and, that's all part of the downtown, the selling of the, the old fire station, then looking at possibly, what could happen if the town, whatever happens with 4 West Main Street and then, the land that's behind it, so kind of reshaping where downtown is or what we consider to be downtown. And I think, that's another chance to look at road patterns and sidewalks and, the whole, again, walkability and just how people get around downtown.
That sounds good.
I don't know if any of us will still be here when something like that comes to be, but I don't think there was anything else, Amy, as far as highlighting.
Okay,
So that's the
thanks.
end
I
of it.
do think it was good for us to go through, and if there's anything someone as a committee that wants us to bring forward as like the planning board rep or anytime, we can all discuss it as a group and I can bring it forward.
Thank you for facilitating.
Yeah, that was a lot. Thank you, Amy.
Yeah, or Kathy.
Well, that too. Yeah.
And it was good to get a lot of those answers too, because some of those questions have been asked over and over again. So it's good to get an idea of where we stand and where we're going.
Okay, anything else on that?
No, I'm just looking at down I had a list of questions in a notebook, but I think we got all of them.
How many things did we check off? Just 2?
I think so. But maybe we could do a couple more.
All right,
We have to compete with these other committees.
all right. 2 down. We don't know how many to go. Okay. So obviously we still have town meeting bylaws discussion. What I was thinking for this is if there are any changes since the last meeting. So if anyone wants to bring forth, if you did any additional research or wanted to consider additional factors, we can go through each and every one if you want, but we've done that a couple times. I wasn't sure if tonight we just want to talk about any updates since the last time, and then what our next, setting up what our next steps would be, just an overall approach to how we want to handle the bylaws.
I had a couple. I have one that I'm starting, so I'm not really ready to go forward with it yet. But I am going to take one of those CTPC classes, and it talked about criteria you should have in your zoning. And I have been looking at other towns and special permit criteria and site plan criteria and conditions. And there were a couple I think we're missing. Majority of towns are the same, but there might be 1 or 2. And I just wanted to bring it forward after I took the class on November 15th, just to see what they have for input in the class.
Are they
What
reviewing
class is that?
I think it was about writing defensible decisions, but it talked about special permit criteria that you want to have in your bylaw, but it didn't say what it was. So I want to go to the class and hear what they say. And maybe it's
so
something we already.
It's virtual. I'm just looking. You just reminded me to take a look at this. So it's all virtual. Is that correct? No in
Yeah.
person? Oh, that's
Yeah.
good. A little bit.
So, and they're all different nights. I was going to sign up for 4 of them. It's much easier now that they're virtual.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other updates?
I did reach out to Bob Federico to see if he has any input or information or guidance for the sober house options. So I haven't, I only reached out to him on Thursday. So hopefully we can connect and maybe either decide to go forward if there's enough to work with, or just continue to see what other towns are doing and what the state is dealing with.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I had one more too. and it had to do with enforcement, but I wasn't sure if Bob was coming tonight or not.
Oh, yeah, did he
So
say
I
he
was-
wasn't able to join us? No.
Because there is, in other towns, we talked about enforcement a couple meetings ago, or maybe it was last meeting, and, I don't want to punish anyone. I have nobody in mind when I was thinking about enforcement. I was just looking at different enforcement bylaws in different towns. And at our last discussion, we said there are violations where you charge money, but a lot of times the town doesn't take them to court. So, it's kind of a moot point. But a lot of these other towns had a statement also that said, after such notice and order, if such violation continues, or if any owner, I just have to open it further so I can see it. Or if any owner, agent, or occupant fails to obey any lawful order of the building inspector with respect to any violation or use contrary to the provisions of these zoning bylaws, the building inspector may revoke any permit issued for the occupation of the premises. So it's kind of like, if you, a lot of them said, if you, like, say we have a special permit with conditions and the owner isn't following the conditions, they're like, all right, we don't have to follow those, we're not going to do it. This says that you can revoke the permit.
Okay.
So I wanted to run that by you guys. I could send it out in an email. And I also was going to run it by Bob tonight if he was here, because I saw it in quite a couple towns and it's worded exactly the same in all the towns. And they go through the penalty by, 50, 100, 300. And then they add, if the violation continues, then the building inspector can revoke the permit. So, and I have no applicant or anybody in mind. I just wanted to put it out there. My computer's dying now, so I got to plug it in.
Okay. All right, do you want to send that then, or send it?
Or
through
I'll send that
Kathy?
to everybody,
Okay,
and maybe Bob or Kathy can look at it. So those were the only two I was thinking about talking at the next meeting: the enforcement and the special permit and site plan criteria and conditions.
okay. Anthony, anything from you? Any updates?
No, I haven't put signs to bed yet, but I'll make that decision, or at least present what I have by next meeting.
Okay. All right, so for me, I went back to look at use variances from the decisions online. And Kathy, I think I sent you a note that I only found 3 from the 2018 and beyond. It looked like otherwise most of the variances are, as we saw, trending in the last report, which was mostly related to signs, setbacks, mostly dimensional overall. An accessory use or two thrown in, but otherwise, or no, not accessory use. Was it I wonder if it was the use or the size? Now I can't remember. It must have been the size. I didn't flag it as, I don't remember. Either
For
way.
for an accessory dwelling, Carrie,
Yeah.
I forgot what was.
For use variances granted, or variances granted, actually.
Oh,
So,
actually, you know what? I think there was one on King Street.
okay.
Is that the one you were talking about?
Maybe.
Where, yeah, they added, I think that one was a combination of, they added to the house for the family that was living there, then plus they were going to do an ADU for, one of the
Yeah, that sounds
in-laws.
familiar.
I think that was the one.
Okay. So hold on, let me see if I can tell you what the exact ones were that I pulled. I'm not sure if I can. Let's see. Hold on. Okay, here we go. So the use variances that I found in the decision since 2018 was the use variance on milk porridge for massage therapy. There was a use variance for a CrossFit gym, which I don't think actually happened on Barefoot Road. And then obviously the one we just saw, the use variance for the warehouse space on One Lyman. So those are the three. So not a lot. And Kathy, I don't know if you had more other ones that, or if there's like a updated spreadsheet available in the works. No.
And no,
So anyway, in terms of how we want to handle that, we had talked about taking a look at what's the history of use variances. And then if we wanted to proceed, then we would obviously talk to the ZBA about that. But that was just that was my homework assignment on that one. Any other, Kathy, anything from you from last time?
no, nothing earth shattering. The developer for Ridge Road did send over some very rough, language, and wants to, review it like with Bob and I first to see that if it even makes sense. So I haven't even read it myself. So we're going to try to do that within the next week or two. And then hopefully his intention is then he would come back, to whenever your next couple of meetings. I know, Carrie, as far as November, well, we can talk about that after this discussion, but just
Okay.
your meeting schedule.
Oh, so nothing on home occupation, that's still TBD?
Correct.
And you said outdoor seating is not anything we have to worry about, it's already taken care of.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, so there's no other staff updates, or there may be staff updates?
No, I don't. I just have some flags in my zoning bylaw that I just need to, put into language, but it's nothing earth shattering.
Okay, so how does the board want to approach, we have a couple of updates since the last time. Let's work backwards. So we need February, we need to have our bylaws ready for the warrant.
Yeah, we should be, we don't have the schedule yet. I mean, I wish I had kept last year's, because I mean, it really doesn't change, the dates change, but I mean, pretty much it's the same, month to month. So yeah, I think it's usually the beginning of February that the town administrator wants the, draft articles from, well, in a little bit more than a draft shape, but wants them from the boards and departments.
Okay. And I think after that, we can still run our public hearings after that submission.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So looking at a beginning of February, what do we want to accomplish within our next few meetings? Do we want to, next time around, we're going to have to go through and figure out what we move forward with to solidify. I think we have some outstanding information on a couple of them still. We have some that we withdrew last time. So I think it's just settling on this last, what we have on the table right now, which we can, if the board wants to talk about it now, we certainly can, but I'm just wondering if we don't have many updates, is that worthwhile? Maybe not.
I think we should just wait
Okay.
with our list.
Okay. Okay, so are there any, in thinking about the bylaws that we have, are there any that we think, or Kathy, if you think as well, if we need any, like in the past, we've asked CMRPC to help with certain information, or is there anything that we have on our list that we're looking for, any additional information from outside sources, or we feel like we can obtain whatever information we need based on our current bylaw proposals?
I was thinking maybe with warehouses, depending on how far we're gonna go. Like, can we have an hour or two, like very specific meeting with them? Because, I got the definitions from Sutton, but maybe there are other questions we have for them. I'd have to think off the top of my head, but I know they were very helpful with solar and hazardous, and they ran that warehouse and distribution panel. And I guess maybe that's more of a question for after the walkthrough. I don't plan on saying much next week if I do the walkthrough, but I'll listen to see, what is said.
Okay, that's a good suggestion.
I
Is
think
that-
you should contact CMRPC with regards to sober houses.
That's exactly what I was gonna
I
ask.
think
Thank you,
you should
Michelle.
rely them. They know the state and they're gonna guide you on that. And if they say you should be waiting, then you should wait.
Yep. I think that's
Okay.
great.
Okay.
If I can, Carrie, if I can just back up a second, when, Amy, when you were talking about the definitions and so forth and you know, talking with Central Mass about that, I'm just looking at what category did we put that in? Was that was talking about the commercial development overlay district or?
Well, we had thrown out a lot about warehouses, everything from moratorium to rewriting the definitions.
Right,
Maybe there has to be more criteria or conditions added to our, special permits that have to do with traffic. That's what I'm finding in some towns.
well, and that's actually, that's separate from, you know, what may or may not need to be added or refined for the decisions like that. That's, you know, we can do that with Central Mass if you want, but that's not for town meeting. You know, that's not really a bylaw discussion. Because that's what the board is voting on, you know, for what to put into decisions. So I was thinking more, are you talking about looking at putting in different definitions, like updating the definitions?
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I just brought up CMRPC when Carrie brought that up is like, maybe they have more ideas. If we decide how we're going to go forward, and we're going to go forward with the moratorium, going to go forward with definitions. I really think we have to decide by next meeting what we're going to do, because they did work with Sutton and the other towns when they worked on their bylaws. But
I wonder. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, and it might just be a quick question. I could maybe even ask the planner from Sutton. I'm trying to think back now what they really changed in their bylaw was the definitions.
Or I wonder if they even have a report on hand coming out of their regional meeting where they brought all those, constituents together on that panel. I think part of this project that they're working on Northborough with was to set in their mind best practices for other towns. So I think they were using this project as a way to formulate that a little bit. So if they've already started to make some formulations, maybe it's as simple as just finding out where they stand, like based on what they're seeing here and in the towns around us. It may not be a heavy lift at all.
Right. And at what point, and I'm not saying this is what I want to do, I'm just thinking in my head, like, at what point would the town say, okay, we have FedEx, Amazon, A. Dewey Pile, that's a lot of uses with traffic on one street. Maybe with the industrial land that's left, we should think of what else would be good for our town. What is our town looking for? What other industrial uses there are? And I'm not saying that's what you do. I mean, that would be something I was thinking of asking CMRPC, like, is there a point when a road hits too many, too much? Because I know with everything in town, whether it was the self-storage containers, our town said, okay, we have so many self-storage unit buildings, enough is enough. Like, and I'm not saying we're at enough is enough, but at what point is enough is enough? I don't know. I'm just wondering if Central Mass Planning may have an idea. Or is it, I look at Iron Mountain and they're $35 million, I think they were assessed at or more. So what about bringing in something else like that? Are they less traffic, but more revenue? I'm not trying to, I'm just trying to think of high revenue projects that Northborough could try to entice to come to their town. If you have 3 in a row, at what point do you say, well, now maybe we should try for something different?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a bad thing, I don't think. like every town looks at their town and says, you know, how many of these do we want? How many of that? Like how many, I'm just using like breweries. We don't even have any, but how many breweries do you want in your town? And how many
Mhm.
different uses? Because I don't think any town is all one use. You like to have a mix of all different facilities that bring in all different revenue. I'm sure we want the highest possible revenue for what little industrial land we have left. If we have 300 acres and only 200 of them are developable, you'd want to use those for high revenue uses that are beneficial to our town.
Mhm.
We're almost at build out. So I just think as a planners or planning board, you just think,
Amy, why do you think that's not a high revenue use?
well, you can look at the assessors.
That's not the
Like-
only way they're taxed. I don't think you have the right information.
Well, I heard that they're not taxed on the trucks because they're not parked there. So how else are they taxed?
Well, maybe that's a good question you can ask the town administrator, and they can help educate the board on that.
Well, yeah, or we could have someone like CMRPC, like each town does something different, like Shrewsbury.
But wouldn't your town administrator have the accurate information coming from your tax assessor's office?
I'm thinking of different ways we can tax our town. Like Shrewsbury did something different than Northborough did. Every town does something different. You can learn from other towns too.
Hmm.
Shrewsbury actually has a 10 cents tax on every Uber drive that initiates in Shrewsbury. I don't know how they did it, but I just read that in the Community Advocate. Like there are different ways to get revenue.
Okay, so to whatever extent we could leverage, I don't know, Kathy, what makes sense to just see like what, if there's any sort of advisory opportunity with, or just some sort of either knowledge, some sort of knowledge sharing, whether it's documentation or maybe we could book some time with them if available. Do you think something like that's possible?
Well, I was trying to narrow this down just for myself as far as what to ask Central Mass about, and I'm not doing a very good job of it because all I've got is from the conversation is about, you know, do we need to update some of our industrial definitions? What I think you probably, you know, should do, well, what I would advise is you need to take a look at the map first. You know, you've asked for you know, a look at what's vacant in town. So, you know, I think you need to take a look at that first, and then maybe more questions will flow from that, Carrie. But I mean, I can certainly, you know, talk to Trish, and you know, Trish settles at Central Mass, and you know, and maybe, you know, obviously she'll talk to other staff members, but just to see if some kind of, you know, are they doing any information gathering now about, you know, updated industrial development or,
Mhm.
right? I mean,
Yeah, that sounds good.
is that,
And
I
then,
mean,
and
pretty broad, but I mean, that's where we're,
let's even get it kicked off. And then Amy, if you attend the walk and just be a fly on the wall and maybe something sticks out from that, and then we'll look at the maps and we'll just start to pull those pieces together.
Right. Yeah.
But it does sound like sober homes was something that I don't know if there's an opportunity to check in with CMRPC on anything they know about sober homes, or
yeah,
if they're.
I'll ask them.
I have one more question, and I don't know if it's a CMRPC subject matter or not, but would they have any advice or input about how a town might go looking at finding parking or developing parking in a downtown area, or do we wait till the downtown committee and all that?
Sure, I think they could be helpful with that, but I think that might be a little premature, Millie,
Okay.
because I think what we need to look at again is, you know, do we want to change any uses? Do we want to change density in the downtown? And then, you know, then there's extremes, like the city of Northampton recently took parking out of their zoning. And they're like, you know what, if you know, you're the business, you figure out what it is that, you know, whether you're doing whether it's all, walk-in customer, I mean, it's a different environment out there. I mean, it's a very walkable,
Okay.
it's a big downtown, but they're no longer requiring specific parking for uses in their downtown. So it's a matter of the businesses figuring out what it is that they think that they need to survive, and then how are they going to provide that? Now that's an extreme, but there are other communities doing that also, I know of in the country, not not just New England, but that's just an example that comes to mind. Northampton recently did it.
Yeah, but I also know they have a big parking garage.
Downtown.
They do.
So, but that to me, that should all be part of that downtown discussion.
Okay.
Is that, and a lot of times parking is always, there's always a discussion about parking, about whether it's a perceived problem or a real problem. And when you end up, part of that will be looking at how many spaces are available in the downtown or whatever area you're talking about. But there's steps that we can certainly, can do for that.
I think it's just worth starting a conversation somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else on that?
No.
All right, so next plan. Oops, I'm looking at the wrong agenda again. Next planning board meetings we have, no, so we're not meeting on the 2nd. Our next one's November 16th. Kathy, did you have something related to schedule you wanted to discuss?
Well, I just wanted to verify that with everybody on November 16th. And then I also want to let everybody know that I am going to be out most of November. I have to have some surgery done at the beginning of the month. So I won't be at your meeting on the 16th, but, and then I'll be back, by the end of the month. And then your December schedule, if you want to think, it's not really that far ahead. But I just noted December 7th, because then I think your other meeting is like the week of Christmas. Yeah, it would be the 21st.
Okay.
If you wanted to still keep that on the schedule, or.
I mean, unless we're really stuck, I don't think anybody would want to do that. Do you guys want to do that?
No.
Hard pass.
We
Okay,
should be able to hammer these out, and
and
Maybe
then,
worst case, we say December 7th is, maybe we're here till midnight, but it's our only one of the month.
right.
and then
And
the
if we
only,
needed,
oh, go ahead, Amy. I'm
oh, sorry, I said if we needed to, we could always do one like maybe the next week versus the 21st.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to push you, Kathy, because it sounds like you have a lot, but do you think the maps would be ready for like mid-November?
I actually have an appointment. We specifically set up a time, myself and the IT director, because he does our maps too. Well, I think it's either like next Monday or Tuesday, and I told him that there might be an assignment coming out of tonight, so that's part of what we're going to talk about, and then I'll be able to find out from him then, based on his schedule, if he'll have that for your November meeting, or would it be for the December meeting? But I'll find that out. All right.
And then I think we're supposed to do a follow-up with town council from some open items and from executive session. Do we need to do that? I thought it was by October, but I don't know if it's delayed.
I just talked to him really briefly today, Carrie, and he said that at some point in the near future, but he didn't have a date yet that he did want to have an executive session with you. So whether it ends up being that in November or the beginning of December, but I'll keep you all posted on that.
Okay.
So we just had a quick call today about one thing that he just needed some follow-up information, and then said, I know that I'm going to need to schedule that executive session.
Okay.
The only other thing, just real quickly, I just wanted to, mention the ZBA applications. If you want to,
Sure.
again, 200 Bartlett Street, you all know that one. So that was continued to the October 26th ZBA meeting. We have another application that came in, but we think there's a little communication problem, but we think that they're not going to go forward, which was the nail salon or nail academy at 300 West Main Street. It's still on the agenda, but that may be coming off. And then 40 and 44 Lawrence Street is I think it's a special permit. I didn't bring in my ZBA folder, but that is an A&R. If you remember, that there was an existing house and then a garage or something. And so 2 lots were created, and now the developer or the applicant is asking per the bylaw to extend the use beyond the groundwater line by 50 feet. And that's something that's in the bylaw that's allowable, but they have to apply for a special permit. So that's what I think it is it's a special permit that they're applying for. So those
Do you
are
know what use they're gonna do?
residential.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So there's an existing house on one of the lots, and then they created that a second lot. And so they want to put a house on that second lot. But however the house is situated, I guess they need to extend because of where the groundwater district is. They need to extend or are going to request to extend the use over the groundwater line. So I think it might be, in groundwater 1 and 2 over there. But, and then the groundwater, who's on the groundwater committee? Anthony, is that you?
Yes.
You're meeting this week, aren't you?
Tomorrow.
Oh, okay. So that one's on the agenda. I know that.
And they're not on sewer, I'm assuming.
No, not on Lawrence Street. No. So they'd be putting in a new septic system. Or they would have to put in a new septic system. So that's it for my list.
All right, so Kathy, we won't see you for all of November then.
Yeah, you always hope it's earlier than, what they tell you your recovery period is going to be. I'll learn more tomorrow. I'm going to the doctor.
Okay,
But anyways, right now he's telling me, 4 weeks. So
okay.
Well, good
Don't
luck.
worry,
I hope it's
I
quicker.
know, good luck.
thank you.
We'll solve all the bylaws while you're gone.
That would be great.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, second.
Second,
All in favor of Millie,
aye.
Anthony,
Aye.
Amy,